Yo, what up? How's it going? And welcome back for another video. In today's video, I'll be telling you everything that I know about all of these synergies in the new set 7.5. Now, I'm basing this information on myself as just being a multi-set challenger player, as well as I played about 100 plus games of the new set on the PvE server, and I track loads of other players from across the world, loads of top players to make these types of videos. So that's the info. Let's do it. Let's get into it. Here we are. And before we dive deep into everything, there are a few things I need to say that just kind of help digest the information. This is the last of my preseason guides that I make. I make 4 preseason guides every single set. And I always do this one last because it's my least favorite to do, just because it's a bit all over the place because there's a lot of overlap between classes and origin, a lot of the stuff that I'll talk about. So there's a lot of overlap here, and it just gets a little all over the place, but you know, we're doing the thing. And it's hard to talk about traits without talking about comp construction, which is, I talk a lot more about comps in my comps video, but if I did comp construction with the traits in this video would be like 6 hours long. And 1, I don't have the mental capacity or time for that, and 2, no one wants to watch that. So I just wanted to say that stuff real quick. And also, the other thing is, Riot actually did a very good job with making a lot of these traits 2 pieces now. Like, as you can see, 2 piece, 2 piece, 2 piece, 2 piece, 2 piece, 2 piece. So they make a lot of the traits 2 pieces now. So it's a lot more, it's a lot easier to splash traits in. And so a lot of these traits, when I'm talking about them, I'll be like, well, this big trait like Dark Flight, well, it works really well with Cannoneer, Assassin, blah, 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 stuff like that. So a lot of the combinations will be honestly kind of obvious. And that's just credit to the devs doing a really good job of making a lot of the synergies in this set feel very intuitive. So with that out of the way, let's actually start talking about our first trait. All right, let's do it. Assassin, Innate. This is Assassin that's always been in every set. So if you played every set, does the same thing. They leap to the back line when the combat starts. Assassin's abilities can critically strike. They gain bonus critical strike chance and bonus critical strike damage. And as you can see, the 2, 4, and 6 trait right here, we have Diana, Nyla, Kiana, and Rengar. Nyla and Rengar are the DPSs. Diana is a hybrid DPS, hybrid tank, and Kiana is a utility style unit. Now, you typically just play around the 2 piece in this comp because, as you can see, there's not very many assassins. Our only reroll option is really Rengar or Diana, and then Nyla is our premier assassin carry. So when you're playing around assassins, guys, you typically are just carrying either Nyla or Rengar. And then if you're playing scale score and then you're playing that, you almost always just play 2 piece unless you have an emblem. At least at the time of making this video, yeah, you almost always just play 2 piece. So like if you're playing Nyla, your other assassin's going to be Kiana. If you're playing Rengar, your other assassin's probably going to be Kiana or Nyla to like do a duo carry type of thing. So that's really just how assassins work. Pretty simple, guys. Something that we've always had. If you want to know like a little bit of tech, if you guys are not used to playing assassins, if you're playing assassin carries and enemies are clumping against you, which they will, it is best to have your frontliners, your tanks, back to the 3rd row so that they can declump and so your assassins can actually get in there. That's just some very basic tech around using that. All right, Bard. This is Bard's unique trait. I already talked about this in the Bard video, but if you guys, and not in the Bard video, in the unit video, but I'll just briefly talk about it a little bit. Whenever you play Bard, he will increase your shop odds by 1% for tier 3, tier 4, and tier 5. He does it 1 at a time. He doesn't do it, you know, he doesn't do all of these 1% every round. He'll do like the tier 5 on one of his ults, and then the tier 4 on his next ult, and the tier 3 on the next ult, and then so on and so forth. But anyways, that's Bard, but I talk a lot more about him in the unit video. All right, Bruiser. Your team gains maximum health. Bruisers gain double the bonus. We have Jax, Malphite, Olaf, Skarner, Siphon, and Silas. It's a 2, 4, 6, and 8 trait. All right, typically whenever you play Bruiser, you'll be playing around 2 or 4. It is very uncommon for you to be playing 6 or 8. That'll be a very niche scenario, like you have multiple emblems, or you play like 6. You play like 6 or 8 or something like that, just because, especially 6. You play like 6 because you just haven't hit your desired board. So this is not a vertical that you usually dip deep into. It is hard to do. Maybe there'll be a patch this set, but it is typically something you play around as a 2 and 4 piece trait, just based on the comp that you're playing. For example, if you're playing Whispers, then you're going to be playing Siphon and Silas, and you probably don't need any more Bruisers. Maybe temporarily you'll be running 2 more for a while, like Jax and Olaf, because Jax is a good unit, and then Olaf would just be your synergy bot. But you usually would be better off just playing other whispers like Pantheon, stuff like that. But that does depend on meta. But just so you know, you usually just play around the 2 or 4 piece. You know, you're playing Olaf scale scorns, you're probably only going to be playing one more Bruiser, which is Silas, I believe, in that comp. You know, because you can play Silas Pantheon for whispers. And that gives you 2 Bruisers. So typically you just play 2 Bruisers, but you play 4 or 6 as a temporary thing when you're getting to your in-game board. All right, Cannoneer. Every 5th attack fires a cannon shot that it explodes for physical damage around the target. It is a 2, 4, and 6 piece trait right here. We have Aphelios, Graves, Senna, Tristana, and Zeri. A lot like Bruisers and Assassins, typically you're just going to be playing around the 2 piece trait. The only time you play around 4 pieces if you're playing around, because Nomsy can also be a Cannoneer. If Cannoneer is Nomsy, because Tristana is representative of Nomsy here. So if Nomsy is Cannoneer, that'd be one of the circumstances that you would dip deep into the 4 or 6, or if just 4 is extremely meta on that patch. That is going to be a circumstance, or you play 4 temporarily while you're getting your better board. But typically when you play Cannoneer, you're playing around the 2 piece trait, but just keep an eye on the meta on whether playing the 4 piece trait is super meta. But yeah, that's just what fits naturally. So for example, when you're playing Graves, something that pairs very well with Graves carry is Zeri, and Zeri pairs very well with this because Graves is a Cannoneer, Zeri is a Cannoneer, and then Graves pairs very well with Nyla. Or obviously Graves you play with Kiana, because Kiana is a Tempest, and if you play Kiana, then you can play Nyla. Nyla is a Lagoon, Zeri is a Lagoon. Kind of see where I'm going with this. Then you can play Seraphine, who's a Mystic. Then you can play Rakan, who's also a Mystic, and then you can play Idis, who's also a Guardian, who Rakan is also a Guardian. So they just naturally kind of pair very well together. In the early game, Aphelios and Senna pair very well together. Senna can also pair very well with Zeri in the early game because, again, you can play Seraphine and Rakan, then you get that natural Rage Wing. But the point is, typically whenever you play this, I kind of got into the weeds there, but typically whenever you play Cannoneer, it's just easiest to play around your 2 piece and get your supporting units around, but just pay attention to the meta on whether the 4 piece is good. And then obviously when Nomsy is the Cannoneer, it is very easy to play around 4 Cannoneer if you'd like. All right, Cavalier. Innate, charge quickly towards their target whenever they move. Cavaliers gain armor and magic resist at the start of combat and after each charge. So they gain that bonus at the start of combat and after each charge. Gain 200% the amount of that for 4 seconds. So you have a natural armor and magic resist boost, but it is increased to 200% at the start and after the charge for 4 seconds. I read that kind of weird. Anyways, it is a 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So it's just like, you know, you just add 1, it gives you more stats. Add 1 more, it gives you more stats, like that. Anyways, so this is a trait that you can actually dip into this vertical pretty heavily, but just be careful because like Sejuani, Rel, and Hecarim are like units that you can play in any board, and it's not weird, you know, like they actually provide something in all of those boards. You know, Sejuani has our guild bonus. Rel's very tanky and gives some tankiness to another unit, so has some nice utility there. And Hecarim obviously has utility with his big CC, whereas Nunu and Lilia are a little bit more comp specific. Nunu less so, but Lilia especially are a little bit more like comp specific units that you'd play. And if you're playing like a Cavalier comp where you're not playing around Nunu and playing around Mirage, the only reason why you'd want to play like Lilia and Nunu if you're playing a bunch of Cavaliers is if you were playing that as a temporary frontline, or you're playing like a devastating charge build. You're playing around like Cavalier augments that make you very strong. So typically you just play around the traits. So like you're either going to play it as a 2-piece, or you'll dip into the vertical in specific comps. Like if you have those emblems, or if you're playing like Deja Cavaliers, then that would be an instance where you can dip very heavily into it because Hecarim, Rel, and Sejuani all provide value to your board no matter what. And then Nunu would be providing immense value because it would get you that 4th Mirage if you're playing Deja carry and the Cavalier. So anyways, that's pretty much how you play Cavaliers. Cavalier emblem is also very good on melee carries, just so you guys know. So like if you want to put a Cavalier emblem on like Olaf, Yone, stuff like that. Very good on Yasuo, that sort of thing. Very good on melee carries. All right, Dragonmancer. Use the Dragonmancer blessing item to choose a hero. The hero gains massively increased health and ability power, which increases by 20% per star level for your Dragonmancers. And we have a 2, 4, 6, and 8 piece here. Typically, when you play Dragonmancers, you will play around 2-piece in the early game. And then if you actually in-game carry a Dragonmancer, you'll be playing around 4-piece and 6-piece. The buff is very large on those. I mean, obviously that can change with balance. We got Kai'Sa, Karma, Lee Sin, Set, Volibear, and Yasuo. So here's the problem with Dragomancers is that a lot of these units, most of these units are just carries. That's all that they provide to your team. That's why you don't try to dip super heavy into the 8 unless you're just in a really high roll scenario. But the buff is so powerful that it is worth running at least for the Dragomancers in your endgame comp if you're going to carry one of them. But yeah, they're pretty much all carries. This is a carry, this is a carry, this is a carry, this is a carry, this is a carry. And this is the only like utility style, but also as a carry unit in the board. So yeah, anyways, whenever you play this, if you want an in-game Dragomancer, you do want to dip into the 4 or the 6. But other than that, you just play around the 2-piece. I really don't have much to say about Dragomancer. Yeah, you just need to know which Dragomancer is meta on that patch. I will say a little bit, I talked about this in the other video, but you know, like Dragomancer Emblem is a very powerful thing on units that scale off of HP and AP. So if you're thinking units like Sejuani, units like Swain, like Jace, so units that scale well off of AP and HP, there's a lot of them. That is someone that you can make into your Dragomancer hero if you want to use a Dragomancer Emblem. Boom, bam, boom. All right, Evoker. Oh yeah, and so if you're building like comps, like what it plays well with, like just whoever you're carrying, you want to play around their buffs. So if you're playing Lee Sin, then you want to have some Tempest and support units, right? If you're playing Kai'Sa, if your Kai'Sa is your carry, then you want to have Lagoon active, and then plus support units, right? If you're playing around Yasuo, then you want to have Warrior and Mirage active, right? So so yeah, just think about it that way. All right, cool. Evoker, gain mana whenever an ally or enemy casts an ability. So anybody casts an ability. It's a 2, 3, and 4 piece, which is pretty cool. We got Aurelion Sol, Lulu, who is not a playable unit, but is tethered to Namzi, if Namzi is the Evoker, Seraphine, and Zyra. These units, this is primarily a splash trait. If you don't know what splash means, and I will be saying it quite a bit in this video, splash trait just means it's something you can just toss in, and it feels really nice. That kind of fit pretty naturally. So, for example, you know, Seraphine's a good unit, right? She's a Lagoon, she's a Mystic, she's an Evoker, she's got 3 tags, she's a really good unit. So if you're going to play Seraphine, then why not play Zyra, who's also a very good unit, right? So just think about it, just think about this trait kind of like that. And that's really what Evoker is. And then you only really carry Evokers whenever you're carrying Aurelion Sol. Or if Namzi is an Evoker, or is the only time you're actually going to like dip deep into this vertical on purpose, is if you're actually going to be carrying one of those Evokers, or you get an Evoker emblem and you can put an emblem on someone else. But typically you just play this as a 2-piece or 3-piece temporarily, or you play it as a 4-piece if you're carrying Evoker Namzi or you have an Evoker emblem. All right, Guardian, once per combat at 50% health, Guardians shield themselves and their closest ally. Shields do stack, it says, very emphatically. Anyways, it is a 2, 4, 6, and 8 piece. We got Brom, Idis, Leona, Nasus, Rakan, and Zachary. So this is a 2, 4, 6, and 8, as we just said. Typically, you'll play around this as a 2-piece trait in most compositions. That is just how it works. 4-piece is something that you play as a temporary frontline in the mid game or in the early game. Or if you're going to reroll Guardians, then something like 4 and 6 can be very good. But yeah, typically you'll just be playing around the 2-piece and then temporarily play the 4. So we got Braum, Idis, Leona, Nasus, Rakan, Zachary. Yeah, so I feel like I don't really need to explain this. It's just a frontline option that you can play. The most common pairing, if you don't know what to play, is just play Rakan and Idis. They're definitely the best units in this selection of Guardians. So usually if you don't know to play, just play those two, because Rakan has 3 traits and then Idis is a dragon. I feel like that explains itself. But yeah, these pair very well with Lagoons, Rage Wings, pairs very well with Graves, as we just talked about a second ago. Stuff like that. Scale Scorn, obviously, if you're going to be playing Braum. So stuff like that. And then if you're playing reroll Guardians, if you don't know the build, I'll just say it very briefly. If you play reroll Guardians, if it's Electric, Overload, Mirage, and you carry Leona, you reroll Leona, Nasus, Yone, Wukong, and then you just play like Rakan and Zach, or Rakan and Braum. And there you go. That's the build. Anyways, all right, Mage. Mages cast twice and have a modified total ability power. Is a 3, 5, 7, and 9 piece. We have Heimerdinger, who is actually Namzi. This is a Namzi tether, so not a playable unit. Lilia, Lux, Soam, Silas, Thalia, Vladimir, and Zoe. So typically whenever you play this, it's very easy to play as a 3-piece trait in a lot of builds, but if you're actually going to be carrying one of your mages, a lot of times you will be playing the 5-piece, and you'll only dip into the 7-piece if you have an emblem usually, or if Namzi is mage, it's a lot easier to hit this if you're going to be playing Namzi carry. But yeah, typically you only play 3 and 5, and then 7 and 9 is very special circumstances. Cool. So the carries for this are Lux. Lux is the carry. Lux is a carry, Lily as a carry, but more in a scale scoring composition, not really mage composition. Soam is a late game carry, Talia is an early game carry, and then Vlad is a mix of those, mix of early game carry and mix of tank. And then Silas is the premier tank, and Zoe is like this sounds kind of weird to say, but she's like a tank and utility unit because her utility provides a lot of frontline to your team. So she like kind of functions in a way as a tank. You don't play her like a tank, you play her on backline. But 2 of her ability casts can provide very heavy tankiness to your team, and 1 of her ability casts buys time for your team and stuff like that. So just an insane unit right here. Anyway, so yeah, so you just want to build your composition around, like, if you're going to be playing Lux carry, you will always be playing, what you need to know is you're always going to be playing Silas. Playing mages, like, you almost always will be playing Silas, unless you have an emblem and you just have a way better frontline option. But like, if you're playing Lux, Silas will always be in your comp. If you're playing Soam, Silas will always be in your comp unless you hit Zoe and you like change to like a Guardian setup. So that's just what you really need to know. Play around 3, play around 5, and then 7 in special circumstances. All right, monoliths create a 3 hexes on the battlefield unit standing in the hex at the start of combat, gain 18% damage reduction. This is just Terra specific. If you play Terra, it gets active. I talked about this in the other video where I talked about units, but essentially it just creates 3 hexes. One is on the center of the board, the very center of your board, like the front row center, and then 3 from the ends on the 4th row. Anyways, yeah, it does exactly what it says. This is just a frontline tank option that you can play. All right, Mystic, your team gains magic resist. It is a 2, 3, 4, and 5. This is a splash trait, like we talked about earlier. Very easy to achieve, very easy to fit in every single comp in the game because every single comp can run Recon and Bard pretty much, or Seraphine and Bard. So that is very easy to do. You only dip into this vertical if the lobby is very AP heavy, or if the meta is very AP heavy, or you just get random emblems. Typically you just play around a 2 or 3 piece trait, but these units are very good. Like Bard, Recon, Seraphine are all really good units, so you can play like these 3 support units in your comp if you'd like, but typically you just play around the 2 piece of Bard Recon or Bard Seraphine, or Seraphine Recon until you hit the Bard, then you drop to Seraphine or drop to Recon for the Bard. And then obviously when you play Shoyu, you can dip pretty deep into this if you're playing Jades or you're playing Shoyu based comp, so you can do that. All right, Namzi, I'm not going to talk about Namzi. I feel like I've talked about Namzi constantly, and if you want to know more about Namzi, then watch the unit guide video, but I've already talked plenty about Namzi in this video as well. All right, Shapeshifter transforming grants bonus maximum health and heals for that amount. It is a 2 and 4 piece trait. If the transforming thing confused you, all of these units, when they use their ability, they transform in some way, so that's what it's talking about. And once they do that, it's their first ability cast, they gain maximum health. Cool. So this is Gnar, Jace, Nidalee, and Shyvana. Gnar is a utility style unit. Jace is a mix of carry and utility. Nidalee is purely a carry unit, and Shyvana is a mixture of tank, utility, and carry. So whenever you play this, you're typically going to play this as a 2 piece unless you are hard carrying one of these units. So for example, if you're rerolling Nidalee, then you can dip into this 4 piece. You'll temporarily play the 2 piece until you get the Shyvana. But yeah, you only play the 4 piece if you're going to carry one of these. But that is special circumstances. Other than that, you just play it as a 2 piece and play around their traits. Cool. All right, Spell Thief, that's Zoe specific. We'll talk about that. We talked about that in the Zoe build. Starcaller, that is Soraka specific. We talked about that in the unit video. And Swift Shot, Innate, gain 2 hex attack range. Swift Shots gain attack speed for each hex between themselves and their target. So it's kind of like a spin on Sniper trait from old. It is a 2, 3, 4, and 5 piece. We have Ezreal, Twitch, Varus, and Xayah. 3 out of 4 of these are purely carries. Ezreal, Varus, and Xayah are purely carries. They don't provide anything else to your team. Varus has some utility, but you never play him as the utility unit because you'd rather play Twitch. He gives way more stats and utility to your team because he has armor shred built into his kit, and the natural attack speed is just so beneficial that I can't consider Varus in the same class as Twitch as a utility unit, even though Varus does have utility built into his kit. Cool. So Typically, you just play this as a 2-piece. The only time you play it as a 4-piece is if that's, for whatever reason, super meta on the patch, or you play it temporarily, or you have an emblem, and so it's a much easier to play because you just need to play 3, and in which case you'd play like let's say you're playing a Xayah carry comp, then you play Xayah Varus Twitch, or if you have a Varus carry comp, then you play Varus Twitch Xayah. Most of the time, the only time you'd sneak in an Ezreal, for whatever reason, if Kiana is going to be on your board, then Ezreal can be a replacement for one of these, but typically it's better just to play these 3 if you're going to play a 4-piece with an emblem. Cool, yeah, so like, you know, if you're going to carry Xayah, you play Twitch. If you're going to be carrying Varus, you play Twitch. If you're going to be carrying Twitch, then you play somebody, you play one of these dudes. It doesn't really matter that much, you know what I'm saying? It's probably Xayah though. Anyways, yeah. All right, warriors. Warrior attacks have a 50% chance to increase the damage of their next attack. It is a 2, 4, and 6-piece, and it just scales the damage right there. We have Olaf, Pantheon, Wukong, Yasuo, Yone. This is a carry. This is a tank utility style unit, but can be an off carry. This is a carry, has some utility, but primarily a carry. We already talked about Yasuo. He's a mix of everything. He's just a god unit, and Yone is purely a carry, doesn't do anything else. All right, when you play warriors, you're going to play around 2 or the 4-piece. Most of the time, you'll just play around the 2-piece. Like you're playing scale scoring, it's a lot easier to play around. Like if you're playing like you're dipping into like 4 scale scoring, it's a lot easier to play around 2. If you're playing like a whisper comp, it's a lot easier to play like just Pantheon and Yasuo. You're playing like reroll Guardians, it's much easier just to play Yone and Wukong, and you have the option to play dip into 4 later. If you hit the Yasuo, obviously you want to play Yasuo, so you can dip into that. So yeah, typically you play around 2, but meta dependent, you can play 4, and then 6 can be very strong, obviously, but that is if you have an emblem. But yeah, you just play around the 2-piece, and whoever you're carrying, you're going to play around those other traits. Like if you're playing Olaf, you're going to be dipping in the scale scoring. If you're playing Pantheon, you're going to be dipping in the whispers. If you're playing Yone, you're actually Yone or Wukong, or Yone, you're actually playing a lot of Guardians, and Wukong, you'll dip into that Jade and stuff like that. Anyways, that is classes. Let's get to the origins. I feel like the origins are the more exciting ones. Yeah, I just think they're more fun. Okay, all right, first we have Astrals. After each player combat, so it's important to note right here, player combat, this does not work on PvE, gain an Astral Orb. I wanted to say additional. The combined star level of your Astral champions increase the quality of your orb. Astral champions gain a bonus ability power. So at 3, it is 5 ability power, 5, it's 30 ability power, orb value increases, and then 8, it is 75 ability power. It doesn't specify that the orb value increases, but I believe it does. But if it doesn't increase from the trait, it will increase naturally by having a 2-star Asol on your board. Cool, and here we have Asol, Lux, Nidalee, Skarner, Varus, and Vlad. Asol we've already talked about. Lux is purely a carry. Asol is like a utility and carry. Lux is purely a carry. Nidalee is a carry. Skarner is a tank. Has some off carry potential, but it's not. Varus is purely a carry, and then Vlad is a mixture of tank and early game carry. And I could see there maybe being a reroll tech on Vlad this set. There wasn't last set, but there has been in the past, so keep an eye out for that. I'm not sure. Okay, one thing I do want to say about this, it is very different than last set of Astral. If you just read this, it is completely different. I don't feel like I need to talk about it. If you read this, it is completely different than the last set of Astral. So very different. It functions a little bit more like Yordle, except for it has this kind of like scaling thing. So if you want to carry like Nidalee, then then you can just reroll on the 3-piece. This is something I need to talk about because it does feel different. I played a lot of Varus on the PvE to try to learn the build. If you're playing Nidalee, then it's fine to play around the 3-piece just to hit your Nidalee, and you can completely get out of Astral and play around like Jades, stuff like that. Like she pairs very well with Jades because a Gnar is going to be the guy that you play, the Shapeshifter that you play. So you typically just pair with Jades if you're going to be playing Nidalee carry. Varus, if you want to reroll Varus, it really feels like, and this might change throughout the set, so if you're watching this later, it might be different, but it really feels like you should be dipping heavily into this 5. So it's not like how it was in last set where you just play the 3, you toggle in the 5 whenever the toggle was bugged, you roll down and you get out instantly. It really does feel a lot more like that you need to play the 5, because when you have the 5 active and your whole board is 2-starred, you will get a lot of Varuses from your orbs and a lot of gold. So I don't know, this might change throughout the set, but it really feels like you should be playing 5 Astral when you want to play Varus and Lux. And you can hit the Varus and Lux 3-star, and that increases your orb value. And then you can drop down to 3 once you hit the Varus 3. If you're playing a Varus centric build or playing a Lux centric build, you can drop down to 3 after you hit your 3 stars for these dudes, or you can just choose to keep your astrals. And obviously, if you're going to be playing the full vertical, you obviously play 5 3-star units, go 8, and then hit your Asoul. Cool. All right, Dark Flight. This is probably the coolest added trait, but it's been a little bit sad because this has been very broken on the PvE, so it kind of has gotten a bad rap so far, but it is probably the coolest trait, and that's Dark Flight. The unit in the Dark Flight Hex, which is just the center of your board, not the front row center, but the actual center of your side of the board, is sacrificed at the start of combat, meaning they will die, granting a copy of a random item they have to each Dark Flight champion, and bonus health to each emblems and non-craftable items are corrupted when they are copied. So you can't put an emblem or like an Orin item or a Radiant item. It's only items that you can craft. You can't put that on them. If you put them on them, it'll be instead converted into Dark Flight Essence, which is like it's kind of like Dark Star. If you guys play Dark Star, it's just like a bunch of stats, and whenever your Dark Flight unit dies, it adds that stats to another Dark Flight unit. So it's just a ball of stats is the item. It doesn't do anything else, but yeah, as your Dark Flight units die, it will stack kind of like Dark Star used to, if you guys played that. Yeah, cool. And it is a 2, 4, 6, and 8 piece. This health is indicated whenever you sacrifice a unit and it grants the item. They will also gain this health no matter what the item is. As long as the unit is being sacrificed, it will do that. Cool. And then yeah, so we have Aphelios, Swain, Rel, and Rengar. And one thing I want to talk about here real quick is the granting a random item. You do not want to put multiple items on this unit. I feel like I don't need to explain that, but it does say random item, so that might like leave it ambiguous for you. You just put one item on them and call it a day. You don't try to like roll the dice every round. But we have Aphelios, Swain, Rel, and Rengar. Aphelios is a carry and utility. He has utility in his kit. Swain is a carry and frontliner. Rel is purely a frontliner, and Rengar is purely a carry or an off carry. That is all that he does. Yeah. So whenever you play these guys, you can play either the 4-piece or the 6-piece is usually how you're going to play it. You can play the 2-piece in the early game, but if you're going to be playing Swain, you're going to be playing 4 or 6. At the time you make this video, it just feels like you should always be playing the 6, because if you're playing this dude, if you're playing Swain, then you probably want to play Rel, so you can play Cavaliers. You can get this natural front line that is very easy to run with your team. You don't have to, but this feels very natural to run. And then if you're playing those, you kind of need an off carry. So who we're going to play as our off carry? Oh, let's play Rengar as an off carry. Wait, we're playing Rengar as an off carry? Well, we have 5 Dark Flight. Might as well just play Aphelios. Oh, if we're playing Rengar, then we can play Kiana. If we're playing Kiana and we're playing Aphelios, we might as well play Graves, right? Who gives us Tempest. Tempest. Or we can play Nyla as a third off carry. So yeah, you just play around the two pieces in this comp quite a bit. So let's talk about some of the items that are really good for your Dark Flight. At the time of making this video, Protector's Vow and ZZ Rot are the best items. ZZ Rot is very good for early and mid game, and the Protector's Vow is where it's at in the late game. The reason is you just stack resist on the Swain, because everyone just procs the Protector's Vow. It is certainly getting nerfed, because Mortdog said he would nerf it, so it is certainly getting nerfed. If you're watching this video on the launch patch or anytime past that build has been nerfed, but it may still be super strong, so I feel like it's worth mentioning it. Because even if it's going to get nerfed, it is probably going to still be good, because it is incredibly OP on the PvE server. Some other items that are good that I found is like Titan's Resolve is very good. It works very well on Aphelios, Rengar, and Swain. Very good item for them, and it's usable in Rel. Warmogs is good. You know, Swain deals very well with HP stats. Rel, I mean, Warmogs is just good. BT is very good as well. Swain has a lot of health, so he can gain from that value. Rel can gain some value from that. Rengar really likes BT. So items like that can be very good. Zeke's can be good if you're carrying like Aphelios and Rengar. That can be a tech that you want to play. But anyways, whenever you play this, you just want to try to maximize the value. Make sure you have the slot open for all these guys, unless you just have a way better item to put on them. Then that's what you do. All right, cool. Dragon. All right, dragons require 2 team slots, provide 3 bonus to their marked trait, like a chosen type thing, and gain additional bonuses based on how many dragons are on your team. And now, if you guys played last set and you haven't been playing the PvE, you haven't been keeping up, you can have as many dragons as you want on your board that will fit. You don't have to have a special augment to activate that, like Dragon Alliance, Dragon Horde. You can just play multiple dragons whenever you like, as long as they fit on your board. Cool. Whenever you play dragons, though, you're typically going to be playing 1 or 2 dragons. That is going to be most common. And if you ever dip deeper in the dragons, you always want to play 4 because you get this natural fawn. It is not very good to play around 3. You know, niche circumstances, yeah, for sure. But typically you want to play 1, 2, or 4. I've never played 5. It just seems kind of strange to me. You gain 10 attack speed, like who cares? But I'm sure it can be good if you're like level 9 or level 10 and depending on meta. All right, the dragons here, we have Ao-Shin, who's the Tempest Dragon, Aurelion Soul, who, and I'll talk about what they do, I guess. Ao-Shin, purely a carry. He is the Tempest Dragon. Aurelion Soul, mix of carry and utility. He is the Astral Dragon. Deja is the Mirage Dragon, purely a carry, or a synergy bot for Mirage, I suppose. But if you play Deja, you want to be carrying him. Swain is the Darkflight Dragon, carry and frontliner. Idis is the Shimmer Dragon, which is purely a tank. Namzi is the Prodigy Dragon, which is a special thing where I'm not going to talk about Namzi because we talk about him all the time, but he can rotate between Evoker, Mage, and Cannoneer, where he gives 2+ to that trait, not rather than 3. You gain 3 Prodigy because that's just his trait. Shoyu is the Jade Dragon. He is a carry. That is pretty much all that he does. If he's on your board, you should probably be putting items on him unless you're playing him for 5 Jade and you're carrying like one of the other Jades, like Wukong. That is the only time that he's on your board, just for the trait and as like kind of a utility style unit, but he's almost certainly a carry. If he's on your board, you should itemize him most of the time. Shyvana is kind of does it all, is the Ragewing Dragon. Soam is purely a carry, is the Lagoon Dragon. Siphon is the Whisper Dragon, is a carry and utility style unit. Terra is just her own thing. We already talked about Terra. And then Zippy is the Guild Dragon, a mix of utility and DPS, but mostly a utility. Cool. I don't know what the full dragon board is on the PvE. The dragon, like, you know, last set we had the full dragon board, which was the 3 dragon board. It was just Deja, Idis, Siphon was the dragon board. I'm not sure what the actual meta dragon board is. The only time I ever see dragon boards on PvE be very successful, it is like legendary dragons. You know, you're playing like a 2-star Ao-Shin, a 2-star Terra, and a 2-star Shyvana. Like, of course that's going to be successful. So I don't necessarily know what the dragon build is at this time. I've tried a couple setups, a few different setups, and that I've like theory crafted. None of them felt very good. But yeah, typically when you play them, you just play around the 1 or 2, or the 4 piece. If you're going to dip in and play those 2-star legendary dragons, can be very good. All right, guild. This is one of my favorite traits. Grant a unique bonus to your team. Guild allies gain double the amount. Increases for each guild members in play. Sejuani, you get health for playing her to add it to your board. Twitch, you get attack speed. Zippy, you get armor and magic resist. Jace, you get AD and AP. Bard, you get mana per attack, and an emblem grants Omnivamp. And as you can see, it is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So it's all just one interval. So you can always gain value. This is the like pinnacle of a splash trait. That is how you play this. So like, don't know what to play. I have an extra slot on my board. I hit a Bard. Boom, we're playing Bard. Don't know what I'm playing. You know, I don't know what to play. I hit a 2-star Jace. Boom, Jace. You know, early game, don't know what to play. Boom, Sejuani. You know, so that's really how you that is mostly how you play around guild. If you want to dip deep into the vertical, it's very comp specific. So almost always you will just be playing as a splash trait. But if you want to dip deep into the vertical, it's very comp specific, but you can like dip deep into the vertical if you want to like carry a Jace, or if Zippy somehow is a carry on that patch, or if you're playing like reroll Twitch. And the most common scenario where you're going to dip deep into this vertical is if you're playing Guild Xayah, because it just works naturally with it. I mean, just look at this. All right, Zippy is obviously he's just a guild unit, so you play him to get the extra guild stats. Twitch is a guild unit. Twitch is a swift shot. Xayah is a swift shot. Sejuani is a Cavalier. Hecarim is a Cavalier. Jace is a Shapeshifter. Shyvana is a Shapeshifter. Bard is a Mystic. Rakan is a Mystic. So that is where you want to dip deep into the vertical, because it's very easy to hit it, because you're going to be playing around all these 2-piece traits with paired with Ragewing, and it makes it just naturally to dip deep into them. All right, cool. Jade. Summon movable Jade statues that grow in power. Each combat allies adjacent to the statue gain attack speed and maximum health healing for 2 seconds. One thing to note about this, it is if you start combat next to the statue, like if your unit leaves the statue, they will still be getting the buff, and if the statue is exploded, they will still get the buff, or at least a visual indicator shows up. When a statue is destroyed, it deals 33% of its health as magic damage to nearby enemies. It is a 3, 5, 7, and 9 piece, so they did change the trait. It's very great that they changed the trait. It used to be a 3, 6, 9, and when it was a 3, 6, 9, you had to play the same comp every single game. very, very, very lame. But now whenever you play this comp, you'll be playing around 3-piece in the early game, and then late game you will usually be playing around the 5-piece, but can dip into the 7-piece, especially if you have a Jade emblem or a Jade heart. And you can play around the 7-piece for sure. But yeah, typically it's 3-piece for the early game, 5-piece for the late game, and then emblems, special circumstances, play the 7 and 9. 9 is obviously very strong. So if you have a bunch of emblems and you can play 9, try it out. It's probably strong. All right, we have Gnar. We have Gnar, who is a utility style unit, carry, I guess, if you want to reroll him, but it's just never been very good. Jax is primarily a utility and tank. He can have some carry potential. Karma is a carry. Shoyu is a carry and has a little bit of utility built in. Soraka is purely utility, and Wukong is primarily a carry or off carry, but does have some utility potential because he does have a stun. All right, so as I said, whenever you're playing this, play around the 3-piece. So like in Hero game, you play around you play around any combination of Karma, Jax, Gnar, and Wukong, and you play around their 2-piece traits. So Dragonmancer, Shapeshifter if you're going to be carrying Nidalee. If you're not carrying Nidalee or Gnar, then don't care about Shapeshifter. Jax or playing around Bruiser is very good because the Bruiser actually does buff your Jade statue as well, which does add a lot of tank value to your team. And Jax is just a beast. And then Wukong, you can play around some warriors and that sort of thing. If you're going to be carrying him in the early game. But yeah, that's pretty much how you play Jade. I'll talk about some good combinations in the late game. Like if you're playing Shoyu, like for example, like the most common combination is going to be Shoyu, Jax, and Gnar, which is going to be the most common thing. And you have the option to play Soraka. So whenever you're playing that, you do want to play around like the most common board, and I have it in my comps video, but you'll be playing Whispers is very good with this, because you can play Silas, who's a very good unit, and you can play Pantheon, who's a super good unit, who gives you healing reduction to your team and will give you Shred, which will help out your Shoyu. Shoyu does deal a portion of his damage is true damage, but it does still help him out. He does deal a lot of physical damage. And then also, usually when you're playing this comp, you'll pair Jace because you're playing Gnar, and you'll like duo carry Shoyu and Jace is going to be the most common setup. And Whispers will help out Jace a lot as well. Get that magic shred so you don't have to build an Ionic Spark on Jace. You can actually build like 2 carry and 1 like sustain or tank item, or you can do 3 carry items instead of having to worry about getting that magic shred. So it's very well paired with those Whispers, Silas, and Pantheon. Cool. Lagoon units gain bonus ability, power, and attack speed. A sea stone appears on the board that grants loot as Lagoon units cast ability over time. It's like a little stack counter. You can see it. It'll stack up, and the more it stacks up, the better the loot gets. So like you get some like crazy payouts at like 200, 300, that sort of thing. But yeah, it's really good for banking items. It is the econ trait, so this vertical is naturally weaker than the other verticals because it is also an econ trait. So you just need to know that it is going to be balanced as weaker. And if it's strong, if it's like really strong, the vertical is really strong, then there's something wrong with the game because it is primarily an econ based trait. And I mean specifically like the 6 vertical. If the 6 vertical is too strong, there's something wrong with the game usually. So it's a 3, 6, 9, and 12. So pretty pretty difficult vertical to achieve. It's not like the 3, 5, but again, it is an econ trait. So you have this like extra, it should be, you should have to commit more to get the value. All right. And one thing to note is that like playing more doesn't increase the value of the loot. It just increases your counter because you have more units on your board who can proc the counter, right? So it just counts up quicker. We have Kaisa, who is purely a carry, Malphite, who is a tank, Nyla, who is a carry, Seraphine, who is a primary utility unit, but we'll have some patches where she can like carry or off carry. Soam is a carry, Talia is a carry, Zac is a tank, Zeri is a carry. Anyways, usually you'll just play around this 3-piece in the early and mid game. Like if you're going to be carrying like a Kaisa in the early game, you get a blue buff. You just play around your 3-piece with like either of the tank options. So usually you'll just be playing around. This makes it pretty simple. You're playing around like Kaisa, Talia, or Zeri as your carry, and you'll be playing around one of the tanks and Seraphine usually, or you play both of the tanks to just get the Lagoon active, right? So any of these are your early game carries: Kaisa, Zeri, Talia. And then you just play the tank options, and you have the option to play Seraphine as well. Whenever you go into the 6, you'll only go into the 6 when you're playing Soam, or into the 9 when you're playing Soam, and that's when you're transitioning to like a Soam carry comp. And when you're playing Soam, if you want to play the 6 vertical, then usually you'll just play, it'll always be Seraphine. One of your tank options, +1. So Soam, one of your tank options, Seraphine +1, which your +1 is a lot of times just going to be Talia because Talia is a mage, but it can be Nyla as well if you get like mage on your board or mage emblem and can get it for free. Yeah, but other than that, you will not be dipping into the 6 and 9 unless you're building a comp around Soam. If you're playing like a Zeri in-game comp, it is so unlikely that you'll be playing 6. You'll just be playing around the 3-piece. All right, Mirage. Mirage champions gain a different trait bonus from game to game. Variations: Electric, Overload, Warlord, Pirate, Dawnbringer, Executioner, Spellsword, Duelist. Hopefully I can do these off the top of my head. Electric is magic damage based off of your maximum health. Whenever you have a chance to proc it, it's like 20%, 25%, 33%. 50%, I think, is the vertical. I don't remember if that's correct. I will not remember the numbers for the other one, by the way. But essentially that is like the tanky one, and you play that if you only play Electric if you're playing like a Nunu focused or a Leona carry composition, which are extremely specific. Warlord is Warlord from set 4, which you gain HP. You gain like a flat amount of HP and ability power, and then it stacks for every round that you win. I think it caps at like 4 or 5 stacks, so it does cap out at that. So this is decent overall in any variation of Mirage that you want to play, but it is much better if you get like a Nunu at the beginning of the game, so you can stack that up because Nunu is a good unit. You can stack that up and can be very strong for your mid game. And having those stacks on Nunu can allow your Deja to hit those stacks much easier because it's more likely you'll win rounds on stage 4 if you already have those stacks active on Nunu. So that's something you kind of want to stack up earlier on in the game. Does make it a lot stronger. Without it, it's kind of hard to play. At least I think so. Pirate is an econ trait, so you just play around this 2-piece, or you can dip into the 4 or 6 just to like farm like crazy. But usually you don't end your board on Pirate unless you're like high roll, you're just high rolling out of your mind. Usually you'll just play Pirate in the early game, just generate some extra econ. If it is Pirate, you definitely don't want to try to carry, like when it's Pirate, you definitely don't want to try to carry Mirage. Unless you're a really high roll and you're accelerated into a Deja and now you're farming at 6 and you're getting like extra items and crazy loot, then that is a scenario. I have won some games in like Challenger Grandmaster Elo playing Mirage or playing Pirate Deja, but it is not that good. Dawnbringer is probably the best Mirage for Deja and Nunu. So whenever you see Dawnbringer at the end of the game, that tells you it's a pretty good option to play. Whenever you're playing Dawnbringer, you do want and what Dawnbringer does, sorry, I didn't explain what it does. What Dawnbringer does is Dawnbringer from set 5. Whenever you dip below 50% health, 50% HP, I think it's 50%, might be a different percentage, but whenever you dip below 50%, you gain a portion of your HP back. So you just like constantly heal. And so whenever you play it, you do want to dip into the 6 or the 8 vertical, because once you get to 6, it actually procs twice in the fight, which is very different from it procking only one time. It is very different. And Deja is a unit that needs a lot of time, and the Nunu scales off of his own HP, so it's very good on Nunu and Deja. Executioner is you gain a critical strike. You gain like critical strike chance and like you're guaranteed a critical strike at a certain health threshold. So like for example, at like 2, it's like I can't remember the exact number. I think it's like if they're below 50% HP or something like that. I don't know. I don't like Executioner. If they're below a certain health threshold, your abilities will crit them and you deal extra crit damage. That's what Executioner does. I just don't like this one at all. It can definitely be good on Deja, dipping into the vertical, but I just don't like this one. It's my least favorite. Spell Sword, you gain ability power per attack. Very good on Deja. It's pretty good on Yone, and it's fine. It's fine on Nunu and Yasuo, but it's really good on Deja, and yeah, very good on Deja. And Duelist. Duelist is good on Deja, it's good on Yasuo, and it's probably Yone's best one. So it's good on all those guys. And if you're playing Deja, this is like when you would want to put a static shiv on your Deja. Can be very good. You don't need extra attack speed. You don't have to dip into that. But like something like static shiv can be good. And like when you're playing Spell Sword, something like Rage Blade can be good. You just always want to scale. You always want to like do the thing that'll buff, like play in a way that is like dipping harder into the trait. So like Spell Sword, you gain ability power per attack. Well, maybe I should attack faster, right? Duelist, I attack really fast. I already attack really fast. Maybe I should put an item that procs off of attack speed, which is like Shiv, and your whole comp is magic damage, so it helps out a lot. Anyways, oh yeah, and whenever you're playing these, like you just play around these traits. So like you either play reroll Guardians with Yone, or you play Deja with Cavaliers, and then Yasuo you just toss in there with the Deja Cavaliers. Or if you're playing Yasuo, you usually just play like Yasuo and Yone. Or if you're already dipping into the vertical, you're playing Cavaliers with Yone, Deja, Yone, or Yone, Deja, Yasuo. Cool. Rage Wing, Innate, convert mana into Rage. Attacks generate 15 Rage after casting an ability in Rage for 4 seconds, gaining attack speed, but cannot gain Rage. Gain bonus stats when in Rage. So you also gain Omnivamp. I don't know. Read pretty weird. You do gain 30% attack speed, and then you gain more based off of the trait. So the 2, 4, 6, and 8 piece. Typically, when you play Rage Wings, you will be playing around 2 and 4. But you can dip into the vertical if that's just meta on that patch. It is possible. Let's go through the units. This is a tank and utility style unit. Rakan is a utility and tank unit. Senna is purely a carry. Set is purely a carry. Shyvana does it all. And Xayah is purely a carry. So usually whenever you play this, you're going to be playing around, in the early game, you'll be playing around the 2-piece. It is very hard to play around a 4-piece, especially there's only 3 people that you can even hit in the early game, these 3. So almost always in the early game, you'll be playing around the 2-piece. So like if you're playing Set reroll, you play Senna Set, and maybe you can drop Senna later if you didn't hit 3-star and play Rakan, that's fine. And then when you get into the late game, you're either playing around the 2 or 4, except for the scenarios where like 6 Rage Wing is really good. Like if that's really good in that meta, then you would just be playing Shyvana, Xayah, Rakan, Hecarim to give you the 6. But usually you just play around the 2 or the 4, and if it's the 2, then you're like carrying Xayah, and then you're playing Rakan with some Mystics and Guardians, or you're playing Xayah with Hecarim with a Cavalier and with Sejuani, that sort of thing. Or you're playing Shyvana with Xayah, or you're carrying Xayah, Shyvana is your off carry, or you're main carrying Shyvana with when you're playing like Hecarim or Rakan to give you that 4-piece Rage Wing. That's typically how you play it. All right, scale scoring. If you don't have a dragon on your team, scale scored champions deal bonus magic damage and take 20% reduced damage from enemies with more than 1900 health. I believe they actually scaled this down to like 1650 because the dragons did get nerfed overall in this set. So I do think this is less, so that it'll be proc more on dragons easier. It is a 2, 4, and 6 piece, and we have Braum, Diana, Lilia, and Olaf. Braum is a tank. That's all that he does. Diana is a mixture of tank and damage. Lilia is primarily a DPS. She doesn't really do anything else, but she does have a tanky synergy, so sometimes she can like provide some tankiness, but she's primarily just damage. And Olaf is just damage. That's all that he does. I mean, he is a little tanky, but he's a damage dealer. All right, typically whenever you play this, you'll be playing around the 2-piece. But if you actually want to play this as like like if you're like carrying an Olaf or carrying a Lilia or Diana, you will want to dip into the 4-piece because the jump from 2 to 4 is very heavy. And so one thing to know about this does apply on item damage. So this does apply on that. It doesn't apply on Runan's Hurricane anymore. They changed that. But like Ionic Spark is the best item to play in this build because even though Olaf doesn't do magic damage, 50% of his damage is converted into magic damage. You understand? So like he will deal physical damage, and then 50% of that will be added on top but converted into magic damage. So Ionic Spark is extremely good to put on like Diana or Lilia for this composition. And whenever you play scale scoring composition, you just play around all the 2 pieces. Like you can play a Guardian, you can play an Assassin. Typically you don't play around a Guardian, but play an Assassin, play a Cavalier, play Olaf, or play a Cavalier, play a Warrior. So like a lot of times whenever you play around scale scoring, so you'll be playing like a Kiana because she's a good utility unit, or playing a Nyla as like you can maybe off carry her. Right? You're playing Lilia, you can play like a Sejuani to get the buff, or you can play a Hecarim too because he's a good unit. In Olaf, you can play like a lot of times people play Silas because he's a Whisper, and you can play, you play Pantheon because he's a warrior, and then you play Silas because he's a Whisper and Bruiser, and that gives you Shred for your team, which is really good, especially if you weren't able to build the Ionic Spark. You have that natural Shred, and then also you don't have to build Last Whisper on your Olaf, which is great. Cool. All right, Shimmer Scale, grant an exclusive random Shimmer Scale item. You can remove Shimmer Scale items by benching the holder. Okay, I don't think I'll be able to remember all of these Shimmer Scale items off the top of my head, but what you need to know about them is they all generate econ, and they all scale off of, all of them except for Mogul's Mail, scales off of the gold that you have, capping at 80 gold. There's a bunch of different items. I will not remember all of them. So, but anyways, at 3, you gain 1 unique item. At 5, you gain 2 unique items. At 7, you gain 4. And at 9, you gain 5, which includes Crown of Champions, which is a really OP item. Anyways, we have Idis, Jax, Nasus, Volibear, and Zoe. Idis a tank, Jax a tank and utility, off carry potential. Nasus tank, off carry potential. Volibear carry, and Zoe a tank and utility style unit. Very, very good unit. Okay, whenever you're playing Shimmer, Shimmer is a very good trait to play in the early game. It's an econ trait. Very good to play in the early and mid game. You never like pivot into it mid game, but if you get a Shimmer opener, and it's very good to play like early and mid game, especially if you hit an early Idis, you can dip into that 5 really easily. So usually that's how you play it, right? You just generate some econ, especially like a Draven's Axe, just farm a couple items. And then in the late game, you're only playing Shimmer scale because you're playing Idis, because Idis is a really good unit, and you can just play around the 3 Shimmer scale, and then maybe sometimes dip into the 5 if you have like an emblem or something like that. The other way that you can play this is if you get it at the beginning of the game, maybe you get a Shimmer augment, maybe you get reckless spending, maybe you get an emblem. You can play for the deep vertical because it is very high roll to have Shimmer scale early on in the game. So you can actually get a really good econ advantage. And if you high roll the Idis, that can be like, oh man, I'm at this big advantageous position. I can just play all these really shitty units, which the Shimmer scale units are really bad, except for Zoe. But Zoe, you don't even have Mage, so unless you're fitting Mage in somehow. So these are really like bad units just to play by themselves. Like these 3 especially over here. I mean, Zoe is a good unit, but not without Mage. Like Jax and Idis are the only ones that like you could just play whenever because they're really good units. So you can dip into the vertical whenever you're high rolling, and it can be extremely strong. I am probably the worst Shimmer scale player on the entire server, so I'm not the best person to ask about this stuff. But yeah, if you get it early on in the game, like even I, who's probably the worst Shimmer scale player on the server, I first played several matches because I just high rolled Shimmer and was like, oh, sweet. I'll just dip deep into the Shimmer. But yeah, I don't have the Shimmer tech for you guys. As I said, I am probably the worst Shimmer scale player. Cool. Tempest. After 8 seconds, lightning strikes the battlefield. Enemies are stunned for 1 second and take a % of their maximum health as true damage. Tempest champions gain increased damage. Is a 2, 4, 6, and 8 piece. Typically, you will only play around the 2 piece, and you'll play around the 4 piece if you're playing Ao Shin. That's usually how you play it. We have Ao Shin, Ezreal, Graves, Lee Sin, Qiyana. Ao Shin purely a carry, Ezreal a carry, Graves a carry. A little bit of off tankiness. Lee Sin a carry, utility, tank, kind of does it all. And Qiyana is a utility unit. So as I said, you usually just be playing around the 2 piece. So like if you're playing Lee Sin, carry, you're playing like Dragonmancer, Lee Sin, you know, you play like a Graves or an Ezreal or a Qiyana to get the proc. And you'll play around 4 if you want to off carry or main carry a Ao Shin with Lee Sin. If you're playing Graves, you'll most likely be pairing Qiyana with Graves because you'll play Qiyana. You'll play Graves, Qiyana, and then if you're playing Qiyana, you play Nyla. So for Assassin, if you're playing Nyla, you're playing Zeri, then you're playing Zeri, you're playing Seraphine, you're playing Seraphine, you're playing Rakan, you're playing Idis. As I've already explained, that comp is pretty complete. So yeah, they pair very well together. But again, you can always just run like Ao Shin with these guys. The only time you want to dip into like the 6 is when you have an emblem. It is very hard to dip into the 6 without an emblem. Usually you're running too many synergy bots. So like if you're playing like around Ao Shin and you're playing Qiyana for your 4 and you get Tempest emblem, you know, maybe think about playing Graves or Lee Sin there, and that can be good. Okay, Whispers. Damage shrinks enemies, reducing their armor and magic resist by 40% for 6 seconds. When they damage a shrunken enemy, Whispers gain stacking bonuses. And we have Pantheon, Sylas, Syphon, Sylas, Zyra, and is a 2, 4, and 6 piece. Pantheon is a tank and off carry. Syphon is the carry and utility unit. Sylas is a tank and utility, and Zyra is purely a utility unit, but does have some carry potential, but she's very inconsistent. So she is not very good as a main carry, but maybe on specific patches where it's very front to back. But usually you play her as an off, like a secondary or a third carry, because her primary role within the team is utility. Okay, so whenever you're playing Whispers, you'll either be playing the 2 or 4. You can actually play 2, 4, or 6. It is actually easy to play any of those. So the 2 piece is going to be the most common, like to splash into comps. Like I was talking about, whenever you're playing Shoyu, it's very easy to play Sylas Pantheon. Whenever you're playing Olaf comp, it's very easy to play Sylas Pantheon. Whenever you're playing mages, it's very easy to play Sylas Zyra. right? So that is when you'll be playing around the 2-piece. When you play around the 4-piece, playing around the 4-piece is whenever you're playing like you're playing the Whispers as your frontline units and you're playing Siphon, right? So if you're playing like Siphon mages, you know, you're playing Siphon and Silas, and the show is really about the mages. Like it's really about the Lux or the Zoe or whatever. It's not really about the Siphon, so that is more of like a frontline option. So that's why we're playing around the 4. Now, if you're going to carry Siphon, then really consider dipping into the 6, because the jump from 3 to 6 is very big. Maybe it'll get changed, but it is very big and it is very natural to play. It doesn't even feel strange to play, because you just play Siphon Silas, and obviously they fit together. You get the 4. Pantheon, super good unit. Zyra, super good unit. And then you can just play around their 2 pieces after that. So you can just play, you know, you're playing Zyra, you have Evoker. Sweet. I'll just play Zyra and Evoker. Sweet. I'll play Seraphine. Seraphine's an Evoker. Oh, I'm playing Seraphine. Maybe I should play Bard. You know, that's really easy. I hit a Yasuo. Maybe we should play Yasuo, right? Yasuo for Warrior, and Yasuo is a super good unit. So yeah, whenever you play this, if you're carrying Siphon, play 4 or 6. And other than that, it's a splash trait at 2 usually, or 4 if you're playing Siphon and Silas as like a frontline for like mages or evokers, that sort of thing. Anyways, guys, that is it for this video. This was quicker than I thought it would be. I thought we would be talking a lot more about this, but yeah, this is it for the preseason guides, guys. I hope you guys like this video, like these videos. I make these videos because I truly believe, like, I think about it a lot, because, you know, you get in this position where, you know, me myself, I play the game and I understand it at a certain level, and everything, like a lot of things just seem like I don't need to explain them, but I always forget that people don't play the game as much as I do, you know, and people need things explained to them. And that is not like, I'm not saying that in a derogatory way. It's just, yeah, I don't even know what I'm talking about here. I really think this video has a lot of value to people. I've thought about it a lot, even though it kind of comes off the cuff, because it's just me just kind of oozing out of my brain. But that's what I want to do here. I just want to tell you everything that I think about whenever I play these traits or play these units or play, you know, these augments, whatever. That is really the goal of these, and I just really want to set you guys up for as much success as you can at the start of your climb this set, because I know not everybody has the time to play the game as much as I do. So if you liked the video and you thought there was value in the video, then please like the video, and you can comment below. It helps me out a lot in the YouTube algorithm. And also you can comment below to just if you have any questions. I'd be happy to answer them if I have an answer for them. Sometimes I don't always have an answer. But yeah, other than that, I appreciate all of you guys. I stream at twitch.tv/TradingTFT. I also post on Twitter at the same @. Those links will be down below, and links to all the other guides will be down below as well. But yeah, I just appreciate all of you. I hope you have a fantastic day, fantastic night, wherever you are. I hope you're doing well. See ya. Bye.